Hey, guys. Imagine a place. Imagine a place where minorities live a full and meaningful life. Like, really, imagine a place where specifically African Americans made up a huge population of the entrepreneurial and political community. I mean, like, imagine a equal and progressive utopia. Now, what if I told you that this utopia was once Wilmington? You thought I was going to say Wakanda, didn't you? Until November of 1898, when a mob of angry white supremacists led the only successful coup in America, and a massacre took place. I mean, like, imagine if you were a political leader or a business owner, and you got a letter with a one-way ticket saying, get out of this neighborhood or else. And by or else, that means shooting and killing your family members and throwing their bodies in the Cape Fear River. Well, that happened in Wilmington. And because of that, it took away the roots of the academic and economic foundation in the African American community. Eventually, taking out the educated, rich, and influential African American population. And this event was so effective that it still affects the African American community to this day. I'm a product of that. I was born in a very stereotypical situation for an African American in a place that I like to call Whitetopia, Wilmington. Low income, high crime, single parent household. So how in the world do I go from a place like that to a stage like this? Well, let's rewind back a little bit to when I was in 11th grade, 2005. I was 16 years old, and my best friend killed somebody point blank range with a shotgun. In self-defense. And he sat in jail for a year. But at that moment, I chose to take a different path at life. So I started to build a bridge out of the situation that I was born into. On the first stop on that bridge was education. I got my degree from UNC Pembroke, and I got a degree in mass communications. But then I had one of those moments that, all college graduates have after they graduate. It's time to go make some money. So I built another bridge. And on the other end of that bridge was, economic possibilities and opportunities. I worked at the President's Hospital working for the government. And it was cool. I was making a fairly good amount of money for myself. But one day I was on the train and I was like, this is me on the train. One day I was on the train and I was like, man, is this what you want to keep doing? Waking up same time, getting off same time, going home same time for the man. I'm like, nah, it's not what I want to do. Actually has nothing to do with my passion or what I wanted to do at all. I'm just really chasing a check, right? So at that moment, I built another bridge. And on the end of that bridge was edification, self-reflection, purpose. I ended up in Atlanta working for a 360-degree brand marketing, strategy, and consulting agency. And it was ran by a black man. That was from Wilmington. And he had clients like Millercoors, Ferrari, Maserati, Jose Feed the Hungry, 2 Chainz, and many more. And I started to realize that I didn't have to dress a certain way or look a certain way to do good business, and that actually people want to connect with you and partner with you and work with you when you're unapologetically your true self. Life was great for me, really. I love Atlanta. But then I realized that for that town, that neighborhood that I left a long time ago, life wasn't great. They weren't living in a progressive and equal utopia. So I wanted to kind of come back and be an example and show the folks how I was able to build bridges for myself out of the situation and ultimately help them to build their own type of bridge. So at that moment, I decided to go back home. Steve Jobs once said, an individual every once in a while creates a revolutionary moment that changes everything. For him, it was the iPhone. For me, it was Support the Poor. I created a nonprofit that connects diverse communities through philanthropy, music, arts, and culture, and more. And because I came from a place where violence was pretty rapid, I figured that would be the first thing that we addressed when we came back home. So we created a campaign called the Stop the Violence One Side of the Town campaign. We put Stop the Violence signs at memorials where people have died due to violence. One thing led to another. People wanted them in their front yards. Businesses wanted them in their front windows. And one day a 14-year-old gets killed in a drive-by shooting. And now the signs have a much more bigger meaning. Before you know it, I was presenting this idea in front of the county commissioner, the mayor, a cool guy by the name of Ben David that you guys are going to see later. And we ended up actually meeting with some of the guys from the streets and having sit-downs and talks about ways that we can resolve this issue. Fast forward a year later, the crime rate drops down 10%, and it's the best behavior that Wilmington's ever seen in 10 years. So I started taking it a little bit more serious. I got a job at Cape Fear Community College working at the Nixon Minority Male Leader Center, where there they help minority students build bridges to resources to help them get their education. And they're also very present in the community by trying to get minorities to come to Cape Fear Community College to get their education. So with the work at Cape Fear Community College and with the work of my nonprofit, Support the Poor, I started to realize a lot more problems. And I started to have a lot more moments that led me to building a lot more, you know what I'm about to say, guys, bridges. For example, some of those bridges were, I realized a problem around the lack of African American history being taught inside the classroom, especially local. So we built a bridge with a UNCW professor and an English teacher from our old high school, and we got it implemented into a summer curricular program for the students that were transferring from 8th grade to 9th grade, and we created a coloring book about the African American history of Wilmington. And I've sold over 5,000 copies of that book up to this point. We also realized that there was a big issue with domestic violence also. So we built a bridge with the local Open Gate shelter, domestic violence shelter, and we also built a bridge with a local mattress company. And we created an awareness campaign called the Queen for a Queen Project, where we provided queen-size beds to domestic violence survivors leaving out of the shelter, going into their homes. We had a lot more initiatives and a lot more bridges that we've built up to this point. And we were very successful at doing so, even though I personally didn't have a lot of resources. With the bridges that were built with Support the Poor, we were able to make an impact. And then I have another moment, a moment that's bigger than any of the other moments that I had. You all might have shared that moment as well with me, because it was Hurricane Florence. 48-hour storm sitting right over top of Little Wilmington. 30 inches of rain. Historically, one of the worst hurricanes to ever hit North Carolina. and the city really didn't know what to do. They had 3 distribution centers, right? For those, that's like the hurricane relief site where you can go and get supplies and, other access and let people know, what happened to your situation at home or what have you. And so they had 3. One by the university, another off by one of the beach areas, and then one downtown by the river, but none by the underserved communities. So we built a bridge with a local church that was right outside one of the most underserved communities in Wilmington. And we had our own relief center. And we went from serving hundreds of people to thousands of people in days. We averaged over 75 volunteers a day, and we got over 90 donations from all over the place. We have about over 3,000 followers on our Facebook social media page, and that was our powering platform. It was so powerful that we ended up getting a donation all the way from New York, and I was unloading a truck with a firefighter that helped relieve 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. Because of these minor successes in the early stages, it got me in the room with the big guys at the big table. You know the big guys, BB&T, United Way, FEMA, Red Cross, Salvation Army. And I was the only person in that room representing that underserved community. But they embraced me. And because of them embracing me, we ended up going from an unofficial relief site to an official recovery center. What that looks like is we went from giving out paper products and hot meals to actually giving out actual services like job employment opportunities, health services, and we actually were able to bring FEMA reps to our actual site. Now that was also a beautiful thing, but one of the most beautiful things that happened during that time was out of those 75 volunteers that we got during that day, it was a melting pot of people. From business leaders to political leaders, to kids right around in the neighborhood, to the big mama of the neighborhood, to gang members, sorority and fraternity members. And those people started to have great, beautiful conversations. And I really realized, how big that racial and social economic gap is here in Wilmington. And even though it was a beautiful thing that was happening at that moment, I just wish that it didn't take the wind from the hurricane to blow away the barriers for that to happen, right? So where do we go from here? What do you take from my story? Well, when I first started talking, I gave you a brief history lesson of some things that was taken from my neighborhood. Education, economic opportunities, influence. And I had to go and build the bridges to get those things back for myself personally. So for every moment that you may have, look at it as an opportunity to build a bridge. You don't have to go searching too far and wide for it. You can look right beside you. It's people that you probably walk by every day that you can connect and build a bridge with. But if you do build a bridge, don't be afraid to be the only blank in the room. Black guy, gay person, white person. Because you are the only fill in the blank in the room. Trust me, it's needed. Because if you weren't there, who would be? So I challenge you all to go out and build bridges. Now, imagine a place where minorities live a full and meaningful life. Now imagine a place where specifically African Americans make up a huge population of the entrepreneurial and political community. Now imagine a place that's really a progressive and equal utopia. What if I told you this place could be Wilmington, North Carolina again? Thank you.